Raise that wind now at 155. We raise that potential for that water rise at the coast. That is the storm surge. And this is the potential. What we could see play out in along this coastline right between Naples and Everglades City, 7 to 11 feet. But north of there, around the Fort Myers area, we could see as much as 16 feet of storm surge, salt water coming above normally dry ground. Not everybody will see these kinds of levels, but this just gives you an idea of the worst case scenario that could play out as Ian makes that landfall later today. Up toward the Tampa Bay area, even though you don't get the actual landfall, you still have the storm surge potential. And first you're going to get it from the east side on those east-facing beaches, and then eventually it's the Gulf of Mexico that comes on shore as those winds turn around. So up toward the Big Bay area, there's also the storm surge potential. Remember, this is a very large hurricane. It's not small and compact like Hurricane Charlie was. So you're going to have a lot of impacts up and down the coast. Right now, we are starting to see a little bit of a water rise in a place like Naples. Not quite a foot, but you're going to continue to see that water push on shore, especially at times of high tide. And here is the tide cycle for a place like Fort Myers, approaching high tide at 6:45. So that is high tide, but even getting up to that time frame, you're going to have that water come up with the storm surge as well as your regular astronomical tide. The next high tide will be again on Thursday morning, tomorrow morning at 5:48, and you're going to have that onshore wind still. So here's a look at the Tampa Bay area, St. Petersburg. No water rise being reported here yet. Remember, you're going to have more of an offshore wind as we are on the top end of the storm, at least initially, and then those winds will eventually come around. So for Naples, down towards Marco Island, anywhere you see the red on this map, note the legend here, we're talking about at least 9 feet of storm surge. So that is Gulf of Mexico water, salt water coming on shore. And you can see these numbers are also very high as we make our way up toward the Fort Myers Beach area, Cypress Lake. Anywhere you see the red, even some of these estuaries and bays that go out to the Gulf of Mexico, you are going to be impacted. And at the same time, that heavy rain is going to be coming down with this storm. So we're very concerned about places like Port Charlotte, over towards Rotunda. You can see the yellows on this map indicating at least 3 to 6 feet of storm surge potential. Again, anywhere along this coastline, especially those low-lying areas, that is where we're very concerned about the water coming up. And this is exactly why those evacuations had to happen. So, of course, we do have the threat of tornadoes as well with any landfalling tropical system, and even the rain bands themselves. They can also cause tornadoes to spin up very quickly. We want to show you now a tornado warning that has just been issued here, pretty much far away from the center. We're going over to practically the eastern side of Florida for this particular tornado warning. It does include Indian River County, Osceola, radar indicating rotation. Again, the National Weather Service are going to be monitoring these bands, and this rotation could pop up very quickly. So as soon as you have rain coming down, if you live in Vero Beach or Fort Pierce, you need to be in a sturdy shelter because these tornadoes happen very quickly. Typically, they're not as big or as strong as what we find in the Midwest or the plains, but still they can do harm and they can injure. And so we're going to have to look for the winds, kind of going around. You can see the Doppler velocity right now. The green is wind going toward the radar, red is going away. So we look for those couplets that can pop up very quickly within those tropical rain bands. Well, Ian, of course, set to unleash catastrophic wind damage across southwest Florida. Jim Cantore is in one of those vulnerable areas in Punta Gorda, where, Jim, I'm sure a lot of people there remember what happened with Charlie. This system, a much bigger hurricane, and coming in as potentially a Cat 5.
Yeah, I mean, no question, even if it doesn't make it there, Kelly, this will be one of the more historic storms, if not one of the, the most historic storm ever for Southwest Florida. There's a lot of memories here, with so many storms. It's just not recent history, and certainly for a lot of the population that's come in through here. So I hope everybody heeded that warning. You got a little bit of time to potentially finish some of the preparations. I do see power on as far as I can see here. But behind me, again, Charlotte Harbor, where the water's being pushed out now, all right? This is the Barry Collier Bridge here, as you can look at it, and there's not a lot of people traveling across it. I don't see a lot of people traveling across it. So hopefully people are heeding the warnings here and just kind of staying at home. Let's get into some of these power issues because they're adding up fast and furious. Notice the wind on the east side of this has put Miami-Dade and Broward counties as well on the list, even though some of the worst winds have been on the west side with this storm. But we're talking about widespread, they're in the possible area, but we've got widespread power outages expected. Fort Myers up to Tampa, including obviously the Barrier Islands, where we're already starting to lose the bulk of the power, and then even up to Orlando. So right up I-4 into Orlando. So let's look at this thing. Big wind field. That wind field's only going to start spreading out, and what you start with coming ashore is what you have to wind down, right? So if you got something that's you're bumping up into Cat 5, let's just say that before landfall, or whether it's steady state or not, we're almost on. I mean, we're 2 miles from a Cat 5 right now. All right, we're 2 miles an hour from a Cat 5, but you're talking about something that has to wind down. So a large area of hurricane force winds. You can see the forecast at noon is for that in Fort Myers. Obviously, in Port Charlotte, in Punta Gorda, in Venice, in Everglades, down to Naples as well, Bonita Springs, Cape Coral, all these areas will be into it. But within that, about 5 to 10 miles, that's where the core of this thing is going to be. That's where you're talking about the 140 to 160 plus gusts that'll occur in that eye wall. And then the thing starts to unravel, and those 100-mile-an-hour wind gusts will spread out into these areas. And so you can see that. So it's that little red area. It looks, even purple or fuchsia in the middle of this thing. That's coming right there into Charlotte County, Lee County, right on shore. And that's where we're going to have potentially major structural damage possible. Now, this thing took, Cat 2, or Cat 4, I should say, Charlie, back in 2004, and a lot of the structures certainly built to code some above that. They may fare a little bit better, but anything that was left standing that's old, structures and things like that may not do as well, especially when you couple the surge potential as well as the wind damage potential. But losing power is an absolute for millions of you, no question. Then, of course, we get into tonight. Winds will start coming a little bit more westerly and then eventually northwesterly and start to wind down a little bit as the core of the storm starts to lose its fuel, which would be, the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. But still, it's going to be an ugly night without power. Several of you will lose power for several weeks. And, of course, you're going to have to begin the cleanup process because that's the kind of hurricane that we're looking at, unfortunately, here. Again, looking behind me, we're definitely talking about something that is coming in later on today. Just an eerie look to the sky. Our winds are offshore right now, and this is going to change big time as we go toward the lunchtime hours today when those winds start to come on shore and start to push the water back up into the harbor.